The shadows whisper secrets of a house where no one survives. Now we delve into a tale that will make you question the very walls around you. Our story begins with the Thornton family, John, Emily, and their 2 children, Max and Lily. They were your typical suburban family, looking for a fresh start in a new town. When they stumbled upon a beautiful Victorian mansion at 13 Ravens Lane, it seemed like a dream come true. The price was surprisingly low for such a grand house, but the Thorntons didn't question their good fortune. Little did they know, they were about to step into a nightmare from which there might be no escape. As they moved in, the air felt heavy with an unseen presence. The children's laughter echoed through the halls, but it seemed to fade too quickly, as if swallowed by the very walls. Emily noticed it first, the way the shadows seemed to linger just a little too long, the inexplicable cold spots in certain rooms, the feeling of being watched when she was alone. John dismissed his wife's concerns, chalking it up to the stress of moving. But as days turned into weeks, even he couldn't ignore the strange occurrences. Objects would move on their own, doors would slam shut without warning, and at night, they'd hear footsteps on the upper floor when everyone was accounted for downstairs. The children were the first to see them, ghostly figures flitting through the hallways, disappearing around corners. Max would wake up screaming, claiming a shadow man was standing at the foot of his bed. Lily started talking to an imaginary friend she called the Lady in White, who apparently lived in her closet. Emily, desperate for answers, began researching the history of their new home. What she discovered chilled her to the bone. The house on 13 Ravens Lane had a dark past. Family after family had moved in over the years. Some had fled in terror. Others had simply ... disappeared. The most disturbing case was that of the previous owners, the Hendersons. They had vanished without a trace 5 years ago, leaving behind a half-eaten dinner and the TV still on. The police investigation turned up nothing, as if the family had simply ceased to exist. As Emily dug deeper, she uncovered a pattern. Every family that had lived in the house had experienced similar phenomena: ghostly sightings, unexplained noises, and a growing sense of dread. But it was always the children who saw the entities first, as if their innocent minds were more attuned to the supernatural realm. John finally started to believe when he saw it himself: a dark, formless shape hovering at the top of the stairs, its presence so malevolent it made his blood run cold. He grabbed Emily and the kids, ready to flee, but as they reached for the front door, it slammed shut on its own. The house seemed to come alive around them, the walls pulsing, the air thick with malice. They huddled together in the living room, the sound of inhuman whispers growing louder. The entities were no longer hiding. Shadowy figures darted across their vision. Spectral hands reached out from the walls. The Lady in White appeared before Lily, her face a mask of sorrow and warning. In that moment of terror, Emily remembered something from her research: a local psychic who had once attempted to cleanse the house. She had spoken of a ritual, a way to appease the spirits and break the curse. But it came at a terrible price. As the supernatural assault intensified, John made a desperate decision. He would perform the ritual, offering himself as a sacrifice to save his family. Emily pleaded with him, but he knew it was their only chance. With tears in his eyes, he began the incantation, his voice rising above the cacophony of spectral wails. A blinding light filled the room, and for a moment, everything went silent. When Emily opened her eyes, the entities were gone, and so was John. The house felt different, lighter somehow, as if a great weight had been lifted. But the cost was unbearable. The Thorntons left 13 Ravens Lane that night, never to return. The house stands empty once again, waiting for its next unsuspecting victims. Some say that on quiet nights, you can still hear John's voice on the wind, forever bound to the house he gave his life to save. But the curse isn't broken, merely appeased. For now the entities slumber, but for how long? And what new horrors await the next family foolish enough to make 13 Ravens Lane their home? If you've made it this far, dear viewer, you're already part of the story. The entities have sensed your presence through the screen. There's only one way to protect yourself now. Subscribe to Enigma Chronicles before it's too late. Your soul may depend on it. And tell us in the comments, would you have the courage to spend a night in the house on 13 Ravens Lane? Or would you run at the first sign of supernatural activity? Remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is know when to leave. Until next time, keep the lights on, and remember, not all houses are meant to be homes. Sweet dreams. If you dare to sleep,